Absolutely. Here's an engaging, inspiring intro for your speech that hooks the audience immediately and keeps them curious for the rest of the video. Have you ever felt exhausted, distracted, or just off, even when nothing in your life seems particularly stressful? You're not imagining it. The truth is, modern life is quietly reshaping your brain and body in ways most people don't notice, slowly pushing your nervous system out of balance. Every notification, every screen, every small pressure you face might seem harmless, but together, they are training your brain to stay on edge all the time. Today, we're going to explore exactly what's happening inside your nervous system, why it's affecting your focus, your mood, and even your health, and most importantly, what you can do to take back control. By the end of this video, you'll understand how your body has been adapting without you realizing it, and how simple, science-backed changes can reset your nervous system, giving you clarity, calm, and resilience you thought was lost. Chronic stimulation keeps the nervous system stuck in fight or flight because the brain is constantly receiving signals that something requires attention, action, or evaluation. The nervous system evolved in an environment where stimulation was rare and meaningful. A sudden sound, a moving shadow, or a physical threat activated the stress response, and once the situation resolved, the system returned to baseline. In modern life, stimulation is no longer rare or meaningful. It is continuous, unpredictable, and largely non-physical. Notifications, messages, artificial lighting, background noise, news updates, social media feeds, and constant decision-making all create a steady stream of inputs that the brain interprets as unresolved demands. The sympathetic branch of the nervous system is designed to mobilize energy. It increases heart rate, sharpens focus, suppresses digestion, and prepares the body for action. This system is not harmful by itself. It is essential for performance and survival. The problem arises when there is no clear signal that the demand has ended. Chronic stimulation removes the recovery signal. When one stimulus blends into the next without pause, the nervous system remains activated because it has no biological reason to shut off. The brain does not require physical danger to trigger this response. Uncertainty and anticipation are enough. Waiting for messages, tracking metrics, monitoring social feedback, or switching rapidly between tasks keeps the system in a low-grade alert state. Over time, this state becomes the nervous system's default. Stress hormones like cortisol remain elevated longer than intended. Breathing becomes shallow and fast. Muscle tension persists even at rest. The parasympathetic system, which is responsible for calming the body and restoring balance, becomes underutilized. This imbalance does not always feel like anxiety or panic. Often it presents as restlessness, difficulty concentrating, irritability, or a sense of mental fatigue without physical exertion. The body is spending energy as if something is wrong, even when nothing obvious is happening. Chronic stimulation also disrupts internal feedback loops. Normally, the nervous system relies on contrast between activation and rest to regulate itself. Constant stimulation flattens those contrasts. Dopamine systems become less sensitive, making calm states feel uncomfortable or boring. Silence and stillness start to feel threatening rather than restorative. As a result, people seek even more stimulation to feel normal, reinforcing the cycle. The nervous system adapts to the environment it is given, and when that environment is continuously stimulating, it adapts toward vigilance rather than recovery. Modern stressors are more damaging precisely because they are subtle, continuous, and rarely trigger a full resolution response in the nervous system. Unlike acute stressors of the past, such as physical danger or short-term survival challenges, modern stress rarely arrives in clear episodes with a beginning and an end. Instead, it exists as background pressure. Deadlines without physical action, financial concerns without immediate solutions, social comparison without closure, and constant exposure to information create stress that is cognitively processed but never biologically discharged. The nervous system remains engaged because the brain keeps signaling that something still requires attention even when no action can be taken. Low-level stress does not feel intense enough to demand rest or recovery, which makes it easy to ignore. People often continue working, scrolling, consuming information, or multitasking while assuming that the stress is manageable. However, the nervous system does not measure stress by intensity alone. It measures stress by duration and unpredictability. A mild stressor that persists for hours or days can be more disruptive than a brief, intense challenge. Continuous stress keeps the body producing stress hormones at low but sustained levels, preventing the system from returning to baseline. This creates a physiological state where the body is never fully calm and never fully mobilized, trapped in between. Modern stressors are also largely psychological rather than physical. The body evolved to resolve stress through movement, exertion, or confrontation followed by rest. Today's stress often involves thinking, worrying, anticipating, or evaluating, none of which provide a physical endpoint. An unanswered email, an unresolved conflict, or uncertainty about the future keeps the brain looping without providing the nervous system a signal that the situation is complete. This loop reinforces vigilance and tension even during periods that should allow recovery, such as evenings or weekends. Another factor that increases the damage of constant low-level stress is the lack of clear feedback. In physical environments, stress responses are followed by sensory confirmation that the threat has passed. In digital and social environments, there is no equivalent signal. Metrics refresh, news updates change, and social feedback fluctuates, keeping the nervous system alert for the next change. This trains the brain to expect instability, which increases baseline arousal. Over time, the nervous system adapts by becoming more reactive and less resilient, responding to minor challenges with disproportionate stress responses. Energy reserves are slowly depleted, emotional regulation becomes harder, and the capacity to tolerate uncertainty weakens as the system remains under quiet but relentless pressure. The autonomic nervous system is the part of the body that operates largely below conscious awareness, regulating essential functions such as heart rate, breathing, digestion, hormone release, and emotional responses. It is divided into two primary branches: the sympathetic nervous system, which mobilizes the body for action, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes rest, recovery, and restoration. In a well-regulated system, these two branches alternate fluidly, allowing the body to respond to challenges when necessary and recover fully afterward. Modern life disrupts this balance by creating conditions in which the sympathetic branch is activated more frequently and for longer periods than intended, while the parasympathetic system receives too few opportunities to restore calm. This imbalance is subtle but cumulative, gradually eroding both physiological and psychological resilience over time. When the nervous system is overloaded, the sympathetic branch dominates even in the absence of immediate danger. Heart rate may remain elevated, muscles may stay tense, and breathing patterns may become shallow and irregular. These physiological signals are interpreted by the brain as ongoing threat, which reinforces a feedback loop of stress and vigilance. The parasympathetic system, which normally triggers a sense of safety and allows for repair processes such as digestion, immune regulation, and hormonal balance, becomes underutilized. This results in a chronic state of low-level stress that does not necessarily feel alarming, but slowly compromises health and performance. Emotional regulation is affected, attention and focus fluctuate, and the capacity for deep restorative sleep diminishes because the body never fully enters a recovery state. Over time, this constant activation leads to structural and functional changes in the nervous system. Neural circuits responsible for threat detection become hypersensitive, while circuits that support calm, focus, and resilience weaken. The brain and body begin to adapt to this chronic arousal as the new normal, which means minor stressors provoke exaggerated responses and recovery from stress takes longer. Even routine daily events, such as minor disagreements, traffic, or email notifications, can trigger disproportionate physiological and emotional reactions. This constant state of readiness consumes energy, disrupts cognitive clarity, and impairs decision-making. As the nervous system prioritizes immediate threat response over long-term planning, learning, and rest, the autonomic nervous system's overload is reinforced by modern habits such as irregular sleep patterns, excessive screen time, and constant exposure to information, all of which maintain sympathetic dominance and prevent parasympathetic engagement. Without intentional interventions to shift the system back into balance, the body remains in a continuous state of subtle but damaging activation. Daily life itself becomes a stressor, and the cumulative effect gradually undermines both mental and physical health, leaving the nervous system less flexible, less adaptive, and more prone to dysfunction. Poor sleep, excessive screen time, and irregular daily routines significantly disrupt the delicate balance between the brain and body, which is central to a healthy nervous system. Sleep is the most powerful natural mechanism for resetting the nervous system, consolidating memory, regulating hormones, and reducing stress. In modern life, artificial light exposure late into the evening, blue light from screens, and inconsistent sleep schedules delay melatonin production and shift circadian rhythms, making it harder for the body to enter deep restorative sleep. Even if someone is in bed for an adequate number of hours, poor sleep quality prevents the parasympathetic nervous system from fully activating, leaving the body in a partially alert, partially fatigued state. Over time, this partial recovery accumulates, reducing overall resilience, impairing cognitive function, and heightening emotional sensitivity. Screens and constant digital stimulation further interfere with the brain-body connection by providing endless inputs that require processing, attention, or evaluation. Unlike physical stressors, which can be resolved and discharged, digital interactions often generate ongoing cognitive and emotional engagement without closure. Notifications, social media feeds, and news alerts keep the sympathetic nervous system partially engaged, even when the individual is attempting to relax. This low-level but continuous activation prevents the nervous system from cycling naturally between states of arousal and rest, which is essential for maintaining flexibility and adaptability. Over time, the brain begins to associate wakefulness with vigilance rather than calm, which blurs the line between active periods and rest periods, making the body less capable of entering a true restorative state. Irregular daily routines exacerbate the problem by disrupting predictable patterns of behavior that the nervous system relies on to anticipate rest and activity. Meal timing, exercise, work hours, and sleep schedules provide cues to the body about when to be alert and when to recover. When these cues are inconsistent, the brain struggles to synchronize its internal systems with environmental rhythms, creating chronic misalignment that heightens stress responses. The result is a nervous system that is constantly guessing, often erring on the side of heightened alertness, which increases fatigue, irritability, and susceptibility to anxiety. The lack of predictable recovery windows prevents the parasympathetic system from fully engaging, leaving the individual in a prolonged state of sympathetic dominance without adequate periods of relaxation. Combined, poor sleep, screens, and irregular routines create a feedback loop in which the nervous system becomes overactivated and underrested. The brain interprets continuous stimulation as ongoing demand, while the body never receives the signals necessary to repair, restore, and maintain optimal function. Over weeks and months, this pattern reduces the nervous system's flexibility, impairs emotional regulation, diminishes focus, and contributes to the development of chronic stress-related symptoms, leaving the body more vulnerable to both physical and mental health challenges. A dysregulated nervous system has profound effects on mood, focus, and immune function because the nervous system is tightly interconnected with nearly every organ and physiological process in the body. When the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches is disrupted, the brain and body enter a state where stress responses are chronically activated and restorative processes are suppressed. This imbalance alters the production and regulation of hormones such as cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline, which in turn affect emotional states, energy levels, and cognitive performance. Elevated cortisol levels, even at modest amounts, can make the brain more reactive to minor stressors, reduce the capacity for concentration, and contribute to irritability, anxiety, or depressive symptoms, creating a cycle that reinforces the dysregulation of the nervous system. Focus is particularly vulnerable because attention and cognitive clarity rely on the nervous system's ability to transition smoothly between activation and calm. A constantly activated sympathetic system primes the brain for vigilance, making it sensitive to distractions while simultaneously impairing sustained attention. Neural networks responsible for executive function, decision-making, and working memory become less efficient, which can make tasks that require prolonged concentration feel exhausting or unmanageable. Over time, the nervous system adapts to this chronic state of alertness, and what should be normal periods of calm or reflection instead trigger subtle stress responses. Even during quiet moments, the body may remain physiologically alert, making deep cognitive engagement more difficult and reducing overall productivity. Immune function is similarly affected because the nervous system communicates directly with immune pathways through hormones and neural signals. Chronic sympathetic activation elevates pro-inflammatory signals while suppressing immune recovery processes, leaving the body more susceptible to infections, slower healing, and systemic inflammation. At the same time, the lack of parasympathetic engagement prevents restorative activities such as digestion, tissue repair, and anti-inflammatory signaling from occurring efficiently. This creates a condition where the body is constantly in a state of low-grade physiological stress, which can manifest as fatigue, heightened sensitivity to pain, or prolonged recovery from minor illnesses or injuries. In addition, a dysregulated nervous system can impair sleep quality, further compounding deficits in mood, focus, and immune resilience. Inadequate or disrupted sleep prevents the natural downregulation of stress hormones and the restorative processes that occur during deep sleep stages. As a result, individuals experience a cumulative deficit in nervous system recovery, which gradually reduces their ability to manage both psychological and physical stressors. Over weeks and months, these effects reinforce each other, creating a cycle where emotional instability, cognitive fatigue, and weakened immunity feed back into further nervous system dysregulation, leaving the body and mind less capable of maintaining equilibrium or responding effectively to everyday challenges. The nervous system is highly adaptable, which means that even when it has been dysregulated by chronic stress, poor sleep, overstimulation, or modern lifestyle factors, it can be retrained and restored to balance through consistent, intentional practices. The brain and autonomic nervous system are plastic, constantly reshaping their connections in response to the inputs they receive. Every thought, action, habit, and environmental cue provides the nervous system with information about whether it is safe to relax or whether it should remain in a state of alertness. When the inputs consistently signal safety, calm, and predictability, the nervous system gradually adjusts, reducing sympathetic dominance and allowing parasympathetic activity to increase. This retraining does not require extraordinary effort or extreme interventions. Rather, it relies on simple, reproducible behaviors that send reliable signals of safety and recovery to the brain. Breathing exercises are one of the most direct ways to communicate with the nervous system. Slow, controlled breathing with longer exhalations stimulates the vagus nerve, which activates the parasympathetic branch and signals the brain that the environment is safe. Over time, regular practice of controlled breathing reduces baseline heart rate, lowers stress hormone levels, and improves emotional regulation. Movement is another critical factor because physical activity provides an outlet for stress hormones, helps regulate neurotransmitter levels, and strengthens neural circuits associated with attention, focus, and emotional resilience. Even moderate daily exercise can enhance the nervous system's ability to recover from stress and maintain balance between activation and rest. Exposure to natural light, particularly in the morning, helps synchronize circadian rhythms, which are central to the nervous system's daily cycles of alertness and recovery. Consistent sleep schedules reinforce these rhythms, allowing the body to predict when it will be active and when it will rest, which strengthens parasympathetic signaling and improves overall resilience. Limiting unnecessary digital stimulation and creating periods of deliberate stillness or silence allow the nervous system to experience contrast between activity and calm, which is essential for training it to respond appropriately to stress. Mindful practices such as meditation, journaling, or quiet reflection also contribute to this retraining by providing repeated cues of safety, focus, and self-regulation. Importantly, the nervous system adapts gradually, and the effects of retraining compound over time. Consistency matters more than intensity. Small, repeated behaviors are sufficient to create lasting neural and physiological changes. As the system becomes more flexible and responsive, the body experiences improvements in emotional stability, cognitive clarity, stress resilience, and overall health. Even in individuals who have experienced years of chronic stress or overstimulation, deliberate science-backed interventions can restore the nervous system's capacity to shift effectively between activation and recovery, enabling improved regulation of mood, focus, and physiological function, and creating a foundation for long-term well-being. Absolutely. Here's a powerful, inspiring conclusion for your speech, ending with a good luck and thank you message for your audience. The state of your nervous system shapes everything you feel, think, and do. Modern life may have quietly pushed it out of balance, making you feel restless, distracted, or drained without a clear reason. But the most important truth is that your nervous system is not broken. It is adaptable, responsive, and capable of change. By understanding how it works and giving it the right signals through sleep, movement, breath, and mindful routines, you can regain control over your focus, your mood, and your overall well-being. Every small, intentional step you take today compounds over time, slowly rewiring your nervous system to be calmer, stronger, and more resilient. You have the power to reclaim clarity, energy, and balance in a world designed to constantly pull your attention away. Good luck on this journey. Remember, real change happens one step at a time, and every effort you make matters. Thank you for taking these minutes to learn how your brain and body work, and for investing in the most important system you will ever own, your nervous system, the neural pulse. Do you want me to do that next?